Hi guys, so my colleagues and I have been assigned to discuss with you the policy pursued by the European Union called Cohesion. This is Brian.
Hi.
And Alex. Hey, Alex.
Hi.
Alright, so first we should tell you what Cohesion is.
Yeah, okay, so isn't it like an attempt to bring the rich people and the poor people together?
Well, yeah, but it's more than that.
To be exact, cohesion is the process of reducing economic and social disparities between regions through specialized aid for projects aiming to close the gap between the rich and the poor.
Exactly. Now notice that we said regions, not states. Regions are geographical divisions within EU member states. For example, Tuscany is a region within Italy that was established back in the days when regional federalist governments were in power. For countries that do not have federalist roots, such as the UK, regions as simple as north, south, east, west were created in order to carry out cohesion policies. The EU has 271 regions.
Yeah, okay, I totally remember this. The purpose of the regions is to represent a coherent geographical, administrative, and economic entity thingy, right? Yeah. But since a lot of the EU member states are so huge, it's impossible for them to represent a unified approach to its country's political, economic, and social problems. Hence, member states are broken into regions, allowing the EU to address specific problems within regions that might not exist elsewhere in the same state.
Wow, Alex, I'm impressed that your brain actually retained information on something other than the dating lives of Hollywood celebrities.
Thanks, Lexi.
At this point, you are probably wondering how the EU implements cohesion. Cohesion is organized around three main funds: the European Regional Development Fund, the European Social Fund, and the Cohesion Fund. The European Regional Development Fund specifically supports research, innovation, environmental protection, and risk prevention for infrastructure.
So the European Social Fund promotes social inclusion as well as access and active participation in the labor market.
And lastly, the Cohesion Fund aims to help exclusively those member states with a GDP less than 90% of the EU average.
So then, the European Commission proposes a maximum budget for the cohesion policy, and the European Council approves the budget and also establishes what percentage of this budget will go to different types of projects. Since 2005, the Council has broken up the type of projects into three main categories, or objectives. Objective 1 is convergence, projects which account for 81.9% of all cohesion-related projects. These projects are for regions with a GDP less than 75% of the EU average.
Then there is the second objective, which is called regional competitiveness and employment, which accounts for 15.7% of cohesion and is for projects demonstrating innovation, sustainable development, and job training programs. Alex, you got the last one. I believe in you.
And lastly, European territorial cooperation. Objective 12. This accounts for the last 2.4% of cohesion, and it is dedicated to projects that help relations on borders between EU regions as well as regions bordering non-EU territory.
Right, now for the specific process of distributing the actual money.
Okay, it all starts with the regions. They must submit a project plan to their national government that includes a budget and possible partner organizations that will aid them in their efforts.
In order to receive funding, these projects must adhere to all of these three principles: concentration, connection, and cooperation.
Cool. So we can call it like the simple 3 C's.
Yes, concentration requires that the regions use the endowment to fulfill at least one of the three objectives that we defined earlier.
The second principle, connection, obligates regions to utilize their funds in a way that improves interactions between the less prosperous peripheral regions with the major growth centers through infrastructure and guaranteed access to service. All right, Alex, make the connection.
Huh, I get it, because you're just talking about connections. You're so funny, Lexi. Not. All right, the last principle is cooperation. The projects submitted by the regions must involve the Commission and the regional and national governments in a way that they can, collaborate with each other. That way no one's left in the dark and they're all working together, as a team. Ew, I hate teams. They always detract the attention away from me.
Anyways, it's also important to note that after the regions propose their plans to the state, they turn around and propose those projects they think are most eligible to the European Commission. The Commission then decides how much money to give the member state, who then decides how to divide the funds between its regions. So the policies are supposed to reflect regional and subnational interests. The member states do have control over how to spend the cohesion money once it is allocated.
Wait, so couldn't the states just, like, spend the money on bouncy castles or something?
Well, no. The Commission does check where the money ends up going. Not only must the projects comply with the three principles, the project must also create long-term jobs, improve the region's infrastructure, create economic diversity, competition, and enterprise, while of course causing no harm, or even better, improving the environment.
So, what do you guys think? Does cohesion work?
Don't look at me.
Well, I think it's a superb vehicle for unifying Europe. Cohesion's utmost intent is to relieve disparity between the rich and the poor, which would result in more economically unified Europe, which was one of the founding principles for the EU back in the days of post-war fragmentation. Furthermore, stimulating the smaller, less stable periphery regions will incentivize people to remain in these regions instead of rushing to major industrial centers and contributing to the urban problems of overcrowding and crime.
Okay, no, wait.
And furthermore, cohesion has important political implications. It helps foster democracy by attempting to provide each citizen with equal opportunity to share his or her country's prosperity. And it helps counteract the common agricultural policy, which gives substantial funds to large-scale producers.
All right, Mr. Optimist. First, you can't possibly hope to achieve those goals with the current allocation of only 50 billion euros a year being funneled towards cohesion policies. Plus, the EU only provides up to 50% of the total funds for projects. The regions themselves have to come up with the other 50%, and the EU cohesion policies have to be approved by a majority of the member states, meaning even the richest states get to have a say in the policies, and in order for the policies to pass, it equates that even regions that don't need it are getting portions of the funds for cohesion. And you know what? Instead of cohesion helping compensate for CAP, why don't you just stop putting so much money into CAP?
You have it all wrong. Cohesion compensates for the regional handicaps in the past 10 years. The Cohesion Fund alone has created over 1 million jobs, trained 10 million workers in skilled labor, and also contributed substantially to transportation infrastructure.
All right, well, what about enlargement?
Oh.
Yeah, you want to use big words? Let's go, buddy. Let's talk about Greece. In 1983, it had a GDP of only 62% of the EU average. This meant that they qualified for cohesion funds under Objective 1 status. You want to know how much those cohesion funds helped over the course of 20 years? Not at all. They only increased to a GDP of 65% of the EU average. And they had Objective 1 status.
And what about Ireland?
Oh, what about Ireland?
Oh my god, you guys, this is a waste of my time. I could be updating my Twitter or watching Jersey Shore. Ugh!
Anyways.
Well, when Ireland joined the EU in 1973, it also had Objective 1 status, retaining only 64% of EU's average GDP. By 2006, with the help of cohesion, of course, its GDP was 145% of the EU average, the second highest in the EU.
Yeah, well, you can't prove that the increase in GDP was solely due to cohesion. Ireland had advantageous circumstances. It was an English-speaking country with a well-educated workforce, strong ties with the U.S., and low wage levels. Oh yeah, and it's also an island with God knows how many seaports. It was a freaking perfect setup for conducting international business.
Oh yeah, well Greece didn't fail because of cohesion. It was just unattractive to foreign investors. There are always strikes going on, it's geographically awkward, and it's nowhere near the blue banana.
Freeze! Blue banana? What in the name of cohesion is that? I know what you're thinking. Is that what the Smurfs eat or something? No! Let me tell you. The blue banana is the area spanning from northern Italy through Switzerland, Austria, Germany, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and up towards Ireland. It comprises some of the most prosperous regions, cities, and nations in the EU, since this banana-shaped pathway allows easy transportation of goods, services, capital, and labor. What?
Anyways.
Greece!
Ireland!
Greece!
Ireland!
Okay, no. You know what? Stop. Just stop. Forget enlargement. You know the real problem with cohesion? It's just a side payment to buy support for European integration.
Guys, That is it. I had to stop watching reruns of The Hills because I couldn't hear over you two debating over the stupid cohesion thing. You know what? That's it. It's time for my opinion. Yes, you know what? EU cohesion has reduced economic disparities in the EU.
No, okay.
Lexi, don't even try to get involved right now. And Brian, wipe that smirk off your face. What I mean to say is that cohesion has reduced the rich-poor gap in some EU countries. Take Cyprus, Slovenia, Czech Republic, who significantly improved their GDP percentage with respect to the EU average since the recession. However, there are other countries such as Greece, Estonia, and Lithuania who are still below the 75% GDP mark. And as far as this side payment discussion, I don't even know what that means.
Okay, well, cohesion is simply a bribe to those smaller states to support other EU policies, such as the cap, which might not gain much acclaim among periphery regions otherwise. Here, small poor states, we will give you money if you go quietly along with our other policies.
Yay. Alright, I totally understand what you're saying, Lexi, but I find it difficult to believe that cohesion is just a side payment. It may look like that from the outside, but cohesion policies are very oriented on helping poorer regions. Consider the convergence objective, where 81.9% of projects are focused on the poorest EU regions. I just doubt that the European Commission and the European Council will go through all the trouble of establishing policies, collecting funds, regulating the cohesion projects, simply to rally support for other policies. Don't you think you could come up with an easier bribe?
Wait. Oh my god, guys. I get it!
It's been 1 week since you